time for season 24 of 60 Plus Racing Adventures, and it all kicks off here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Russ Addy has elevated himself as the winningest driver in the Pro 2000 era of 60 Plus Racing Adventures, ahead of Steve Greenwood, ahead of Donald Fitterer. Can he defend that this year, this season? 60 Plus Racing Adventures, a fantastic championship opening up sim racing to drivers 60 years of age or older. Gives them a great place to race against each other, great place to maybe reminisce, and shows that sim racing can be for absolutely everyone. Not only is there not a lower age limit, there's really no practical upper age limit either. All of our drivers here 60 years of age or older, and also the Super 70s Championship, pretty fiercely competed as well. Thanks for joining us for this coverage on RaceSpotTV. I'm David Haynes, joined by Joshua Lee. Josh, what have we got to get us up to speed for this new season?
Well, of course, the new season brings a new calendar of races that we're going to have for the 60 Plus Racing Adventures. And of course, it all kicks off here at the newly configured Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course, which just recently in the iRacing service updated with some new scan data. Also, the new configuration of the infield road course, giving these drivers a little bit more of a challenge here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And of course, not broadcasted, they got Watkins Glen Phoenix, the all-new Fuji International Speedway as well, with Road Atlanta before we come back into the commentary booth, David, on week 6, Silverstone, the historic layout of Silverstone. If you've been around the iRacing service for a long time, you'll remember a certain Will Vincent and a certain iRacing World Championship Grand Prix Series race at that layout, and every race that I've ever commentated there has always been exciting. Then Rudskogen, Spa-Francorchamps, Twin Ring Motegi, Iowa, the Daytona road course, and then finishing off the season and right back here on RaceSpotTV at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. This schedule is very challenging with 2 new courses on it, as well as some old favorites that the drivers will be returning to.
And just like the official championship, a mix of mostly road, but a couple oval layouts in there as well, which can really spice up that championship for sure, and some great circuits that we're going to be broadcasting this season. Not only this shiny new Indianapolis road course, but then Canadian Tire Motorsports Park later on in the championship. Great circuits, a lot of new ones in there, like you mentioned, Fuji, Rudskogen. That'll be a real challenge for our drivers. This is how they washed out at the end of season 23 2 weeks ago at the Nordschleife. Russ Addy taking his 3rd championship, clear of John Morgan, who became the Super 70s champion, and a good overall showing there as well. Paul Stump helped his team to the team's championship, even if he wasn't able to challenge at the tippy top of the drivers' standings, because Bob Cohen, Mike McCormick, and Steve Greenwood completed our top 6, Stump and Greenwood combining to the best teams total. Mike Grandy, Marcel Sproining, Donald Fitterer, and Bruce Poole was our top 10 in the standings at the end of last season. Those are some names to watch, no doubt, coming into season 24, but it is a clean slate for everyone.
We get to see a good handful of drivers now on the track for qualifying as we get started this evening. Of course, great to see everybody back with the 60 Plus Racing Adventures. And only about 90 seconds left of qualifying. Everybody but 2 drivers have laid down a qualifying lap. Currently, we're watching Peter Hallstrom as he'll work his way across the start-finish line. Of course, this very long straightaway, the front straightaway of both the road course and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway oval layout. But of course, everybody will notice that on this layout of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in the infield road course, well, they're going backwards along that front straightaway other than the oval layout, which creates for a very, very long run from the start-finish line, and where these drivers will start the race all the way down into turns number 1 and 2 in that complex, which has shown challenge, whether it's Indy cars or whether it's the NASCAR Xfinity or Cup Series here. They always seem to have a little argy-bargy down at turn 1.
Yeah, no doubt. The strength of the slipstream in this car as well is going to lead into that too. Starting out from season 1 in this championship, they were in the Pro Mazda. Then as the American open wheel ladder moved along, so too did this championship, and we moved on to this Indy Pro 2000 that we use now. So a decent chunk of horsepower. Drivers often report the tyre wear towards the end of these sort of 30-40 minute races, but it does give some pretty strong slipstreaming at times. We're going to expect that not only down this pit straight, but also down the back straight as well. Talk about that quick flick onto the back straight and then the potential overtaking opportunities at that part of the circuit. 2 races ahead of us as per normal. Qualifying for race number 1 has finished. There will be a qualifying for race number 2 before that race takes place. But here is how they are going to line up for race number 1. Ragnar Wisloff on the pole, 2 times a champion. His stats have now been eclipsed by Russ Addy. Could this be the season he fights back? He's got Marcellus Bräuning with him on the front row. Then it is Mike Grandy and Steve Greenwood. John Morgan, reigning Super 70s champion, there out of 5th, with Donald Poole in 6th. Forming our first 3 rows, and it's Ulf Olsen, Barry Hills, Donald Fitterer, Gerhardus Jorrison, Mike McCormick, and defending champ Russ Addy back there in 12th place.
Eugene Clark is going to start P13 with Bruce Poole, who is outside P14. Peter Hallstrom, who we're just watching in qualifying, only could do 15th best on the grid, with Jerry Kerr 16th, Jack Turner 17th. JC Hay is going to round out the top 18 on the grid, with Douglas Beasley, Richard Columby, Earl Setzer, Robert Love, the top 22, with David Bradley, Bob Kern, Franz Brink, and Gene Moore going to round out the full field of 26 that'll get ready to take the green flag here from virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway. David, as they all will sit lined up on the front straightaway and get going under the pace lap.
Yep, so we're going to have a full formation lap to a rolling start. Look at those stands, all absolutely full. Looking at the race info here, 23 laps, an incident limit in effect. I hope that's not something any of our drivers get close to. 1 fast repair available to them though. This is race number 1 of 2, and a quirk of the scoring for this championship is from each week, from each round, your championship points is whichever was your best finish of race 1 and 2. If you get crashed out of race number 1, well, a good finish in race number 2 wipes that slate clean.
And that is super important for these drivers, because you think about both of our races tonight. Not only does it give them an opportunity if in race number 1 they have an incident and they lose a bunch of points, they get to kind of make those up in race number 2 and have the better score be counted. But also, if you perform well in race number 1, say you get a top 5, well, you can go a little bit more aggressive, maybe make a little bit more aggressive moves that could lead to an incident if gone wrong, but you can go a little bit further out there, go outside the box, and really go forward in race number 2 to try and either get more points, or if you get less points, that first race is still going to count towards the championship.
Yep, a slightly different dynamic, and of course no progressive grid either, because after this race comes a brand new qualifying session to set the grid for race number 2. It's a wipe of the slate in between. Now this is one of the corners where we might see some overtaking happen for sure. At the end of the back straight, squeezes into this S's section, and some pretty aggressive curbs around as well. Change of direction and the balance of the car absolutely key through that part of the lap there. Multiple changes of direction. Track temperature is relatively cool. It's at 22 Celsius, and this graphic won't tell me silly Fahrenheit numbers, but that is a pretty cool track temperature. If it was much hotter, you'd worry more about the balance of the car through the changes of direction.
Yeah, with the cooler track temp, these drivers will have a little bit of help in the grip department, but this track, the few times that I've raced on it in the virtual world, David, has not had a ton of grip on it, whether it's Indy cars, whether it's the NASCAR machines. They're going to be struggling for grip either way.
You're trying to set me up, and I'm not falling for it just yet, but the pace car is in to the pit entry. They're going to box the field back a little bit. No hurry from Ragnar Wisloff just yet, as he works his way through that sweeping, ought to be flat out final corner. Onto the pit straight now, he decides it's time. He's going to string the field out. They're going to cross over that world famous yard of bricks. to start race number 1 of a new season, a new championship, and a new era of 60-plus racing adventures. A great start from Ragnar Wisloff. Where are the moves going to happen deeper in the field? Russ Addy, for one, trying to outbrake down the inside, qualifying not what we might have expected from him, but he's already picked off 2 spots as he looks to work his way up early goings.
And already going to race through the middle portion of the infield, and it's Ragnar Wisloff that's really pulled away, but one driver around in the middle of the track, and actually multiple cars around. That'll be Mike Grandy involved. Marcellus Browning backed into the tires. Mike Grandy is in it with John Morgan in it as well, as out in front, top 2 pull away, and side by side between Fitterer and Olsen as they continue to fight further back.
Yeah, so from a good qualifying spot for our Super 70s champion, reigning champion, he's dropped back very, very much, has John Morgan. A few drivers involved in that danger pinch zone. Smooth sailing though so far for Ragnar Wisloff. Steve Greenwood going with him, and it's created a bit of a gap back to 3rd-ish place. Where does it start? Oh, it's Mike Grandy with a bit too much of that curb. You see there, John Morgan gets involved. Broining a little bit later on involved in the picture.
It looked like one driver was involved before kind of this incident happened. Dude, that's the blue car right up there. I'll go back one more time. Yeah, they were just wrecking. So it looks like Browning wrecked beforehand. Grandy got hit the curb, and then here comes John Morgan, nowhere to go in the 177, and slams into this group. Some
more dramas coming to the start-finish line though for Ulf Olsen and some others who spun there in the final sector. Not what I would have expected to see. The carnage that we saw earlier on, where we might have expected, but not there. So Wisloff leading from Greenwood, who is into that slipstream zone and not letting your leader get away. Russ Addy continuing that charge forward as well, up into 6th. This at the front, different lines through the S's there, and for Wisloff I think that lets him square off the exit a little bit more. Not a massive run through here towards the next braking zone to get up onto the banking, and yet another driver getting caught out by this new Indy road course configuration. Greenwood right in touch now, look at that, under half a second, squaring up for the draft as they come onto the start-finish straight. I noticed a lot of them letting the car breathe out pretty wide and almost catching a little bit of that banking at the end of the final corner. Greenwood picks up the fastest lap of the race in his pursuit of Wisloff. Great pull down the straight, not close enough to attack just yet. That driver that went around in the middle of the infield road course section was Donald Poole. Not sure what happened. Didn't look like to be that too big of an incident, so we'll stay here with this battle for the race lead and a couple of the other battles that are starting to brew further on back as we see this group of drivers. This is for P14 on the racetrack. This is between Robert Love, Earl Setzer, and Bob Kern, and you can see Setzer right on the back wing of Robert Love, gonna try and look to the inside as they enter into the middle portion of the track and through this chicane that can get dicey, and Setzer's gonna get way loose after a touch to the curb, give Bob Kern a top 15 spot, and here comes Jack Turner also to fight for 16th, and he'll take that spot away from Setzer. Yeah, crunch point through that quick left-right flick, and I think Setzer didn't want to be squeezed in that sandwich and then maybe caught a little bit too much of that curb. It's going to very easily bottom out cars like these, very low slung and a short wheelbase to go with it. Bit higher up the grid though, we saw it was on for 1 and 2, it's on for 3 and 4. Barry Hills towing along Donald Fitterer, Russ Addy up to 5th, in yellow and black in the background. Almost inevitable as the pace continues to ratchet up. These cars start on pretty cold tyres. It's a pretty cold track. As they work their way through and burn off a little bit of that fuel, the pace picks up to about the halfway point of the race, and then they start wearing off a bit of the grip of the tyres. So the drivers getting more grip, more confidence and more speed as we go on at the moment, which is the optimal line onto this back straight, because there's a difference between Hills and Fitterer.
And Russ Addy up to 5th after what was, to be frank, a pretty lackluster qualifying effort. I mean, qualified P12, and you can see Barry Hills, Donald Fitterer, both of them qualified 8th and 9th as well. Steve Greenwood qualifying in 4th, so everybody except for Ragnar Wisloff in the field has either gained spots or lost spots, and Ragnar Wisloff, a great start for him, who has just led since the outset, but Greenwood hasn't let him go just yet. This isn't a walk-off victory for Wisloff yet, but with 20 to go, 19 to go at the line, he needs to be careful with Greenwood behind. We're not really going to see the tires wear, but we are going to see the tires get out of their heat cycle, as it looks like Barry Hills might have just had an issue. He's off and into the grass.
Yep, final sector of the lap. Couple changes of direction there as well. You want to get close to the grass to open up all of those corners. Has he maybe caught a little too much of it? No damage to the race car, but from trying to hold on to a 3rd place, Hills has lost it there. Trying to pick up the throttle in sort of 1st, 2nd gear can be a challenge in these cars. So what he does in 2nd, pushes it a little wide and just has a bit too much steering cranked on as he grabs the throttle. He's also still got the mesh on that livery.
So easy to do, especially through that last corner as well, through that ending sector of the track. Once you're getting on the gas there, it's very tight to make it in the braking zone as well. Very tight turn to make, and unfortunately Barry Hills was a little bit too hard on the gas and ended up going around. But you can see that purple on the timing tower now for reigning champion, multiple seasons now running, Russ Addy in the 111. Fastest time of the race set last time by, only driver now to go into the 122 flat. So 122.043 the time for Addy last time by. And as he chases down Donald Fitterer, who is a good bit up the road still, about 1 second separating the top 3rd and 4th, separating the top 2. It'll be about 0.8 of a second as Wisloff continues to hold that lead. Another lap down, and Wisloff gonna go back to the top of the board to the new fastest lap, 122.030.
Yeah, the pace is ticking up. They call him Addy because you can always count on him. And he has moved up big in this race from 12th on the grid up into 4th, potentially still pursuing a podium spot. As for who could be the winner, that is very, very undecided at this point. 7 tenths, and they carry a lot of speed onto the straight. Powerful slipstream, not letting Wisloff get away. The most ferocious racing, though, would be in the middle of the pack, because you've got Jerry Kerr, Peter Hellstrom, Eugene Clark, Douglas Beasley, JC Hay, all of them in this group here. That is a good Indianapolis livery there as well for Peter Hellstrom. The yellow submarine.
Ooh, and off the track,
Jerry Kerr
up the
goes
road,
wide.
Jerry Kerr. He comes back on, loses time, but doesn't lose any positions. I'm wondering if he has a slowdown off of that one, David. That was very close to it. It doesn't look like he's slowing down. No, he is. So he is going to slow down outside of the racetrack. Just told Holstrom to go by. Eugene Clark will take it as well. And we probably have to let Beasley and Hay by as well. But contact is made, and Clark is off the racetrack with Jerry Kerr.
So in the braking zone there, trying to let a couple cars pass, but not too many. And then outbrakes himself a little bit as Eugene Clark comes back onto the racing line in front of him. A little messy. Pretty significant damage to the suspension for Eugene Clark, actually, in that. Back live, gap to the lead. I'd call that a car length. Steve Greenwood doesn't look like he's trying to decisively make a move just yet, but he's as close as he's ever been. Russ Addy now up into a podium position as he gets on by Donald Fitterer. Still, about 6 seconds from Addy up to that leading group. Might be difficult to claw back at the rate that they're going, but Addy now up into a podium position.
And this battle for the lead has not let up. It's still Steve Greenwood trying to get around Ragnar Wisloff, but he just cannot get that move done. Once he gets within about 3 tenths, he ends up backing off a little bit and losing a bit of time. we're going to be getting close to halfway done with this race as we put 7 behind us onto lap number 8 of 23. And he gains a ton of time on the straightaways. That slipstream is massive down the long back straightaway, faux back straightaway, if you will, on the infield road courses. There goes, I believe that is Eugene Clark back onto the racetrack. He'll let both of the leaders race on by. But you have the front stretch, which is a very, very long straightaway. And then you have this back straightaway that on the old configuration of the Indianapolis road course was about this long. And it was a DRS zone in Formula One, specifically in the iRacing Formula One World Championship, the iRacing World Championship Grand Prix Series back a couple of years ago. That was used as a DRS zone, and so was the front straightaway. So you can use both of those long straightaways as an advantage to get that slipstream. Of course, the Indy Pro 2000s, no DRS or ERS on these things, but you can still get a really good slipstream and make some good braking zone moves.
And the most obvious example of that is it's an identical car between Wisloff and Greenwood. Wisloff has led every single meter, every single lap so far. His maximum speed, 248 kilometers an hour. Meanwhile, Greenwood in that tow has been able to manage 255. So 7 kilometers an hour difference potentially at the end of the straight here. And you're going to see about where that starts to come into effect for Steve Greenwood. He's kind of half following in the tow. You see him roll out of the throttle a little early there. He's willing to ride this one out for the long run, I think. That's what that view tells me.
Yeah, I think all he's doing right now is just kind of maybe waiting on a mistake for Ragnar Wisloff, and also maybe just not wanting to lead the way, because if he is getting those big slipstreams and kind of backing out of it, David, what that is also telling me is that he knows that if he gets the lead, Wisloff can be aggressive and take it right back. Maybe he wants to take it at the last possible moment, give Wisloff no opportunities to come back, because again, if Greenwood knows that in second place he's getting these runs and has an opportunity to take the lead, he knows that Ragnar Wisloff can just do the exact same thing if he were to get by him.
Could be a bit of cat and mouse up front, that's for sure. They've run in this order basically since the end of lap number 1. Is there a point in the 23 laps of race number 1 that it could come to a bit of a head, to a bit of a boil? Let's see who's in this one for that long haul. Racing still continues deeper in the field, as is always the case in 60 plus racing adventures. There's always someone racing someone somewhere. Bob Kern and Gene Moore of the 14th and 15th, a good example of that right now. Through the middle sector of the lap, point of the lap where you might just start to think about setting up the guy in front onto the pit straight.
Gene Moore with 8/10 behind Bob Kern at the current moment. Wonderful chrome paint scheme on that number 6 series. He runs through the vinyl sector, and we'll go on board with Gene Moore. See what he's looking at as he tries to get a slipstream down the front straightaway, and you can see just how important it is to set up that slipstream, and you can see how Bob Kern knows how important that slipstream is. He tried to break it, but too much momentum down the straightaway, and seems like Gene Moore, you heard him get out of the gas there, David. I think he's trying to do pretty much the exact same thing that we've seen so far, which is lay back, don't make the move too early, because we saw how big that slipstream was on the front straightaway. If he were to get by Bob Kern will be able to do it next time by.
Yeah, and between these two, it's the trailing driver who's got the fastest lap so far in this race, but not getting past or not able to get past. Bit of drama up front, though, because they had run absolutely in lockstep, but a lapse in concentration, a problem on the brakes for Steve Greenwood at the end of the back straight, going into the S's. He overshot the corner, he's lost time, and now he's closer to third than he is to first. Here's how it happened. Trying to stay close to the leader, misses his braking zone, has to run on deep, runs across the grass. Could have been a huge problem, a huge incident. It wasn't, but what it has done is cost about 4 seconds to Greenwood, dropped him away from the slipstream of your leader, of the pole sitter. And now as we take the long look, you see first, you see second, you see third, about 3 seconds to separate each from each other.
Yeah, that has just completely spread out this front group, and honestly, good on Greenwood. He did not hit the back wing of Ragnar Wislov. He was very close to doing so. Decided just instead to kind of dump the car off of the track when it was going bad, which props to him, making not an incident, but just going off track for himself. No damage to that number 555, just about 3 seconds lost in time.
Honestly, looked like if he'd have tried to turn into the corner, he would have lost the rear and spun it.
Yep.
Anyway, well out of control as he arrived on the scene. This presents a bit of an opportunity to Russ Addy if he can keep the pace up to look for second. So first and second looked out of his reach without a mistake from Wislov and Greenwood. Well, he hasn't had a mistake from Wislov. He has seen a little bit of a mistake from Greenwood, puts him within range, and I think he smells that. It's on Russ Addy, finding a little bit more pace in reserve at this point of the race. Puts in the fastest lap of the race, claws a little bit more time out of Greenwood, but the speed of your top three is in a league of its own compared to the rest.
And we've got a battle now developing for P6. Gerhardus Jorison, Bruce Poole fighting with 6th and 7th. They got Mike McCormick back behind him as well, make it a 3-car battle here, as they'll all spread themselves out. Actually, I think they have a lapped car behind them, directly behind them. Actually, yes, that is, it looks to be the 177 of John Morgan. And Bruce Poole just lost a ton of time there as well off of the chicane.
One of those things where if you don't know what the driver is going to do, if or when or how they might let you through, you don't want to hurtle headlong into a problem in a situation you can't get yourself out of. So a little bit of caution being given in here. And yeah, with that fastest lap of the race being about 80 seconds, not improbable that we get quite a bit more lap traffic around this circuit. And he takes a little bit of a problem and then a trip through pit lane, and you can be very rapidly staring down the barrel of being a whole lap down. Not a problem we had in last season's season finale at the Nürburgring Nordschleife. Tougher to go a full lap down there than it is here.
Over halfway done with this race now. 11 laps remain with Gerhardus Jorison in 6th. He still has Bruce Poole now that has caught back up, so 56, 57 with some good speed behind the wheel there of Poole, and he'll look to try and chase down Jorison again on this back straightaway on board with Bruce Poole, the Canadian running P7. Hard on the brakes down into the left-hander, but just does not have enough momentum to catch up to Jorison. But from going to 1.5 seconds back last time by now, David, to running through this exact same section within 4/10, showing some great speed is Bruce Poole.
It's looking promising, that's for sure. This final sector, pop up onto the banking, brake with the car at a little bit of an angle, and he doesn't go super deep into there, and takes a relatively narrow line into what's the last real corner, flat out through here, and they're still finding more speed. You saw Ragnar Wislov goes and takes the fastest lap of the race, only half a tenth faster than Addy's best effort on one of the previous laps. And for Poole, he's got all the answers through the middle part of the lap, but not off the final corner and not off the final sector. He looks way tidier through 1 and 2 here. You may be surprised into turn 3. Once again, it's at a car length in a place that you can't quite pass just yet. That looks like a good run. Move could be on.
Let's see what Bruce Poole can do. He's within 3/10, make it within 2/10. Does he have enough to do it through the next corner? He'll get hard on the brakes, but not enough. Back to 3/10 through the braking zone. And in this middle portion of the lap as well, you really got to be careful when getting back on that gas. These cars do not have a ton of grip. This track does not have a ton of grip, so these drivers on the racetrack need to be careful when getting back on the gas. We've already seen issues with that today. Hopefully we don't see any more, as Jorison can feel Bruce Poole right on behind as John Morgan, lap machine, front row seat for this group.
Absolutely. You can see he's been picking up a little bit of the slipstream and trying to respectfully stay out of this if he can. So I'd say first half of the lap looks like Bruce Poole territory, but the back half of the lap, Gerhardus Jorgensen has his measure to be out of striking distance here at the key braking zone at turn number 1. But then Poole right back in the picture again.
Ragnar Wisloff as well. Fastest lap of the race again at the front of the field. 4 seconds separating himself and Steve Greenwood, as Bruce Poole going to have another opportunity here within 2/10. Does he go for it? No, he does not. Still stays right behind Gerhardus Jorgensen and stays in P7. If he does go for that move and end up making a mistake and losing time, he will still have lap machine John Morgan behind, which it's pretty much a golden rule in iRacing, David, for the lap cars to kind of stay out of the way of battles. But if the 57 makes a mistake and John Morgan ends up in the middle of these two, that's only going to slow Bruce Poole down more with 8 laps to go in this race this time by.
Yeah, Morgan's being patient, but if you let him back through, he's not going to let you back through, I wouldn't think. And we do see a lot of sporting conduct typically in this league. Elsetsa has a little bit of a drama, but they all race against each other every week, week in, week out, and some of them for 10 seasons or longer. There is a lot of mutual respect. Drivers don't want to cause problems unnecessarily when they're a lapped car or just in their racing. So here for Elsetsa.
Oh, there we go.
Quite tight on the exit, picks up the throttle, and it, again, is a relatively low grip surface.
An issue for Douglas Beasley as well that we'll grab a replay of here in the number 9. I'm wondering if it was somewhat of the same exact thing. Here comes the 9, working his way back onto turns, the short chute between 1 and 2 on the oval layout. Ooh, locks up the brakes completely, and ooh, is that on the outside of the racing line? That's the 771 of Richard Columby. So that is what happened to Columby. I saw an issue for Columby as well. He did the exact same thing as Beasley, but unfortunately Beasley had the 771 on the outside line in that braking zone and ended up making contact with him when he locked it up.
Hit the one tree and then almost got in the way of his teammate. Tried to turn left into pit entry and it didn't turn. So yeah, pretty dramatic there. It's a place that is pretty easy to lock a tyre because the circuit isn't flat. It cambers on the short chute, and it's the only... That's not quite true. I was going to say it's the only place on the road course where you brake on the oval banking, which is cut and grooved where the infield road course isn't. So what you get is a lot of lateral grip on the oval, but not a lot of longitudinal grip. You get up there, you start trying to brake, and while you've got a lot of grip for the oval configuration, you don't have a lot of grip for the road course straight line braking.
Back through the middle sector, 6 to go, and Ragnar Wisloff crosses the yard of bricks this time by, and Gerhardus Jorgensen still holds 6th place with about 4 seconds up the road to Barry Hills in 5th in the number 66. So they have a lap machine right in front of them. That's going to be the 73 of Eugene Clark. We have the top 16 all still on the lead lap. Then from Franz Brink down through Eugene Clark, John Morgan, Ulf Olsen, Douglas Beasley, Jerry Kerr, and Mike Grandy. They're all still on the racetrack, but all of them 1 lap down respectively. And then Richard Columby, Marcellus Browning, and Donald Poole in the pit lane, 5, 16, and 16 laps down respectively, as we see Jorgensen make a move on Clark and put the lap machine in between himself and Bruce Poole.
Yep, and then Bruce Poole doesn't quite know what to do when he gets to the traffic either, so it creates a little bit of a gap between Jorgensen and Poole. Do you think Poole might close that one up in time? Wait and see though. Yet more action. That is into turns 1 and 2. Jack Turner and JC Hay. Looked like Turner might have got the move done.
Great move for the 55 of Jack Turner to get over by JC Hay, and Hay losing a bit of time now as well. I'm wondering if that 89 might have a problem. Doesn't look like any aerodynamic damage, at least to the front or rear wings. I'm not sure, but he kind of let Jack Turner by. I heard JC Hay say something over the iRacing voice chat and then let Turner go on by, and now, yeah, he's down to 1.4 seconds now separating Turner and Hay. I'm wondering what happened to the number 89. I don't see any damage unless I'm not seeing something, David.
Can be hard to know. Whoa,
Suspension
hello. That's not where the
damage,
corner
maybe?
goes.
Who was that just went way off? Was that Beasley? It was.
He's taking the old road course. Not the first time we've seen drivers struggle for the braking in that section of the course. In fact, isn't that where Eugene Clark got hit the first time?
I believe it was. We've seen a lot of issues in that one corner.
So yet another scary moment in the final sector for Eugene Clark as the drivers around him don't quite pick their braking markers right. Yorison and Poole though. Poole unable to get past, but not letting Yorison get away. So proper cat and mouse here over what is 6th and 7th place at the minute. We need to give it a catchy name. For that braking zone that they've just gone through. We can't call it the Snake Pit because that's somewhere else here.
Yeah, I think that name's already taken by somewhere off the back straightaway. It's not, I would say maybe there are already corner names picked out, but it's not a European track. So most likely no, as we see Earl Setzer hit the pit lane. Unique thing about this series is some races will require a pit stop, some races won't. This race being one of them, so drivers can go all the way to the end on fuel, no real tire wear, so these drivers can make it all the way to the end, no problem.
Yeah, it's looking pretty comfy for Ragnar Wisloff. His last lap, a 122 flat, would be good enough for the third fastest lap of the race. But it's 1.5 tenths away from his best, so he's still nailing in some pretty rapid laps there with a lead that's 6.5 seconds, the greatest he's enjoyed. And then it's 3 seconds to Addy, about 4 or 5 seconds to Fitterer, and then another 8 to Barry Hills. 4 seconds off those guys, you'll find Gerhardus Yorison and Bruce Poole, and Yorison trying to defend down the inside. Poole's decided, I'm going to go around the outside of the not Snake Pit. They're still side by side. Very ginger from Poole, offline, trying to be gentle, picking up the throttle, but I think it was Yorison that in the end had the bigger slide. Side by side coming out of the final corner. They are going to drag race across the yard of bricks. I reckon Yorison's got the better car positioning here. He'll have the inside for what's quite a tight turn number 1. He brakes early though, and around the outside looks like it'll work for Bruce Poole.
Bruce Poole outbrakes Gerhardus Yorison by a long margin, and luckily there is a bit of runoff area off of turn number 1 that does not give an off track, does not give a track limits violation, so he was able to use a bit of it, and late braking gonna work for Bruce Poole to grab P6. Bob Kern back in another battle. This time it's gonna be with David Bradley. This is battle for 12. 5 tenths separating the 6 and the 72. You can see that red number 6 coming into frame and the green number 72 sucking him down from about now as they go through turn number 1. That gap's going to go all the way down to about 4 tenths as they get back to the throttle.
Kern really grabbing a lot of that first apex curb, something you don't want to do in these cars. Those curbs are placed to try to discourage stock cars, and these are not going to handle it very well at all. New fastest lap for Ragnar Wisloff as he shows no signs of resting with 2 laps to go, extending his lead, extending his gap. It's back on though between Poole and Yorison. Yorison in the same position he was a lap ago, breaks a little bit deeper. He's going to go side by side through 1, but again, great work around the outside of turn number 1 for Bruce Poole.
He's able to keep that spot. They're only going to have 2 more opportunities to go fighting through this middle portion, and right now is one of them, as Ragnar Wisloff is ready to take that white flag as he works his way through the short chute of turns 1 and 2. Beautiful race from Ragnar Wisloff, not a foot wrong in this one, and he's going to take this white flag. David just has to go around the famed Indianapolis Motor Speedway one more time to have a race number 1 victory.
And to take the lead of the championship as he does it. My goodness. Ragnar Wisloff back in form, it looks like, in 60 plus racing adventures. He's gone and lowered the bar once again. He's not let off. He's pushing on. He's enjoying this car and this track. The battles aren't done yet either. Not only Bruce Poole and Gerhardus Yorison shaping up, but behind them and a lap down, John Morgan and Eugene Clark are battling for position 16th and 17th. Being as kind as he has, John Morgan now might need to try to unlap himself, if only to defend himself from Eugene Clark. So that's what he's going to do. Look down the inside of Yorison, but not do anything too crazy. He needs to unlap himself to be able to stay in front of Eugene Clark.
I don't think he's going to be able to do it. Yeah, I don't think he has enough speed to do it, especially in now Yorison with a big gap over himself and Bruce Poole. But through the final couple of corners, David Wisloff is looking at Barney the Flagman, holding that checkered flag for the first time this season.
Ragnar Wisloff, twice a 60 plus racing adventures champion for season 24. He's going to start it off in style. Pole, every lap led, and the win. Ragnar Wisloff going to kiss the bricks at Indianapolis Motor Speedway and take the fastest lap of the race on the final lap, just to say, you thought you had me, you never had me. What a great start for him. Steve Greenwood looks like he's going to get second and Russ Addy third, so a good opening to the championship for them with the podium for race number 1 of 2 tonight. And Poole took his time, but he did get around Gerhardus Yorison, and he will hold on to that one. 6th and 7th for those guys.
Some drivers still working their way through the middle portion of the racetrack as well. David Bradley with a solid gap over Bob Kern now, as the 72 was able to get that move done for 12th. And here comes David Bradley through the final couple of corners here and back onto the short chute. There's turn 2 of the oval in the background. There's turn 1 of the oval right there. And they'll work their way backwards down the front straightaway and across the yard of bricks, and everybody else working their way on through as Jerry Kerr and Douglas Beasley come across the line. Kerr is going to keep P20. And we just wait on Bradley, Kern, and Gene Moore, who we see coming to frame behind as well, to come across the line. And that'll be race number 1 of the evening over and done. David, what an exciting one we saw.
Yeah, and I think I've settled on the name for that that braking zone in the final sector. I'm going to call it the Museum Mayhem.
I like it.
Given that's about where it is. Yeah, good museum here as well. Let's look at those race 1 results. Ragnar Wisloff, like we said, unstoppable with the pole, with every lap led, with the fastest lap, with the win. He bags a very tidy start to the championship with that. Greenwood went with him for the first half, but cracked under the pressure, missed one of his braking markers, and then ended up falling 8.5 seconds back, but not quite into the grips of Russ Addy, working his way up from 12th on the grid to a podium in race number 1. Top 10 completed by Donald Federer, Barry Hills, Bruce Poole, Gerhardus Yorison, Mike McCormick, Peter Hallstrom, and Jack Turner. Over the page with JC Hay, David Bradley, Bob Kern, Gene Moore, Robert Love, John Morgan. There's a driver who could do a lot better in race number 2 and will be thankful for the clean slate. He did manage to stay ahead of Eugene Clark and then it was Franz Brink, Ulf Olsen, and Jerry Kerr. Drivers a lap down along with Douglas Beasley, Mike Grandy, 2 down for Earl Setzer, and then I think relatively fair to call it retirements for Richard Coulomb, Marcellus Breuning, and Donald Poole. Again, race 2 gives them all a fresh start to try to claim good points and a consistent race at Indianapolis Motor Speedway on this new updated road course. Let's have a look at who we got standing by with us. Well, definitely we can go to our race 1 winner. Ragnar, you are back.
Yes. Yes. Hi guys. Good to speak to you again. It's been a while.
Now, there's some good history for Dutchies and Swedes at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Not so much for Norwegians, but you were bordering on unstoppable in that first race.
Okay, well, thank you. That's kind of you. I guess other than Dennis Hauger, there aren't too many very quick Norwegians in single-seaters, at least. But he is definitely someone to watch for the future.
And then totally unrelated to this evening's proceedings, but how you feel about Rudskogen on the calendar for later on?
Oh, it's wonderful. It's it's as close as we could get to a track being my home track. It's about an hour and a half drive from me, and I've got a few laps there on track days, and they've done a very good job scanning it. It feels just right. The bumps are there. There's a few corners, turn 3 and 4, where I think maybe the grip is a bit exaggerated, but it feels really good, and it's such a different track to this one with all the hills and the ups and the downs. This thing is totally flat, so it's very different. But I'm looking forward to that.
Not as much earthwork and cliff face here, but it is still a sort of new track to iRacing, given all the updates, both graphical and to the layout for the road course they've given it. So how was the sort of learning process and the challenging corners? It looks like the curbs are tough for this car.
Oh, this is a challenging track. It's a very technical track. There are so many places where you make a tiny mistake and it costs you 5/10. And to top that, for this race, I felt that it took maybe 3 laps for the tires to warm up. So I was very, very careful in the first few laps. I felt I was not in control at all. And there are quite a few places where you slip up. But you're right. There are a few places where you need to really clip the curbs and go right on top of them to get the good lap times.
Been looking at some stats, and since 60 Plus Racing Adventures has gone to this Indy Pro 2000 car, Russ Addy has been statistically the most successful in terms of championships. He's now on 3. You've got the opportunity with this start to equalize that.
Okay, you're throwing down the gauntlet, are you?
I think I'm just trying to play it up, you know. Obviously,
no pressure.
Championship is always your goal when you can, and this is a good start. So I'm sure you're pleased.
Yes, it's a very good start, and there are some very, very quick drivers in this league. All of them are gentlemen, and you can trust them. So the racing is always very, very good. But I'm sure in the next 11 weeks there will be plenty of opportunities to have good racing, and for everyone to slip up, not just I.
Well, congratulations then on incredibly dominant race number 1 with that pole position, with the fastest lap, and with the win. We'll let you go.
Thank you.
Because race number 2 can't be too far away.
Right. Thank you, guys.
Super generous with his time. Joshua, we've also got the defending champion Russ Addy.
And Russ joins us now up here in the broadcast booth. And Russ, it wasn't exactly the qualifying you were looking for, but a solid result on the podium. P3, up 9 spots from where you started.
Yeah, kind of a surprise result, honestly. Yeah, I got a 1X on the second lap in qualifying, and that put me on the back foot.
Well, through that, you were able to get back up through the field, however, but how difficult was it? I mean, we saw one driver kind of fall out. That gave you a spot, but from there, were you just trying to make up as many spots on the start? It looked like after lap 1, you were already up a solid jump.
Yeah, well, the first lap, I think there were 2 or 3 people that went out that were ahead of me. So through just kind of trying to keep it steady in attrition, I wound up in 3rd somehow. I wasn't expecting it, I can tell you that.
So you're defending multiple championships now, getting started P3 in the points. Of course, race number 2, an opportunity to get a little bit better in the points. What are you looking to do in this 3rd race other than qualify a little bit better?
Well, that's the key. I think being the top 5 to start, although Ragnar was so fast, I don't know if I'd have been able to beat him. The guys ahead of me are also past champions, so you're always going to have a tough fight.
Well, race number 2 coming up very, very shortly. Russ, congratulations on your 3rd place, and hopefully we're talking to you again after race number 2.
I hope so. Thanks, Joshua. Thanks, David, for televising. And thanks to the back markers. They were good today.
Great to hear, David, from Russ Addy, of course, now reigning champion, multiple seasons now running, and not exactly the qualifying he was looking for, but the attrition that he used through that race to get up onto the podium, and hopefully we'll see him again on the podium in race 2.
I think he undersells himself a little bit. He was pretty quick. He had that fastest lap at points in the race. So hopefully we get them all put on another great show in race number 2. It's not far away. We'll take a little break and we'll return with qualifying and with the race. Race number 2 is 60 plus racing adventures from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course. Thanks for sticking with us on RaceSpotTV as we now bring you Qualifying 2 and Race 2. This opening round, Season 24 of 60 Plus Racing Adventures. Rather unique sim racing league and championship for sim racers over the age of 60. And there are plenty of them. I always say more people turn 60 every day. This is a league that has grown strength to strength across its now 24 seasons. That should tell you something just based on the longevity. So now the drivers are going to qualify to set the grid for race number 2. Not the be-all and end-all of the racing here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway on the road course. So we did see Russ Addy go from 12th through onto the podium in 3rd place. But for the pole setter from race number 1, Ragnar Wisloff, he definitely enjoyed having that grid position and capitalizing and converting it into a race win. Perfect start to his championship. David Haynes here, joined by Joshua Lee, also on the production. While they're out there on their outlap, warming their tires, and I think a pretty interesting insight from that race winner Ragnar Wisloff. He said it took him 3 race laps. Or was it Russ? I think both of them gave pretty similar feedback. It did take quite a couple of laps to really build the tyre temperature, the confidence. In this qualifying, they get 1 outlap, 2 flying laps that count. By the time they've wrapped up their qualifying, they're only just at probably the happy optimal window.
And you can see that track temperature, 22 degrees Celsius, relatively cool still. So same exact weather that we saw from race number 1. So that's going to make it pretty much the exact same thing these drivers will face in this race, which is a lot of time to get those tires warmed up, as these drivers will hit the track for the first time in qualifying for the second race of 2. With 8 minutes still left on the clock, everybody getting their first flying laps in now as we take a look at John Morgan in the 177. Ran into an issue on the opening lap of the last race, and now he's going to try and set a good time here in qualifying. Solid first sector time at a 20.582.
Yeah, second in the overall standings last season, the Super 70s champion, and he didn't get off to a great start in that race number 1, despite the good qualifying, and then kind of kept his head down and his profile low for the other 22 laps of that opening race number 1. So what will he have learned to keep himself out of trouble in the second race? Definitely, if you had to pick any of the drivers who struggled in race number 1 to maybe be able to use this opportunity of the second race, I'd say John Morgan's absolutely key amongst them.
Crossing the line here for Morgan. 122.296. He'll go to first in the meantime. But we've still got more drivers crossing the line. Mike McCormick comes across the line. Douglas Beasley is going to slide into 4th. Where is Russ Addy going to slide in on his first flying lap? He's across the line. 122.787, only good enough for P5 as Ragnar Wisloff goes to the top of the board. 122.157.
The drivers get 2 laps in this qualifying, so the first lap, typically what you would call your banker lap. Lap 2, the all-out attack. So here's Ragnar Wisloff, the pole for the moment. He doesn't have the purple sector through sector number 1. That belongs to Russ Addy, so they are dueling now for this. Marcellus Breuning picks up the purple sector number 2 before Wisloff and Addy get to that timing line. Wisloff gets to it for a personal best, but not purple. Russ Addy gets to it without a personal best, so Marcellus Breuning's on a good lap. Ragnar Wisloff is on to improve, but nothing crazy through all the sectors. Steve Greenwood is going to get to the line at the end of his first flying lap. Of course, it's all personal best. It's his first flying lap. For Wisloff, though, he's gone purple in that 3rd sector, so he's definitely on a cumulative to improve. He currently sits at the top of the board, but there are others who could usurp him. Probably not Breuning. Probably not Addy. For Wisloff, this is looking like it could be the pole lap. He's going to come to the line with the purple final sector, improve to a 120.8. looking relatively comfortable at the moment.
And it was a beautiful lap by Ragnar Wisloff, the only driver in the 121s now. As we look at Gene Moore, still yet to put in a banker lap time. This is going to be his first one that he slides onto the board. As we see Peter Hallstrom improving to P12. What can Gene Moore do as he makes the final run to the start-finish line, back onto the banking of turn 1, back to the front straightaway, and it's not going to be the best lap. 124.095, only going to be good enough for P21 on the board, as we still have only one more driver left to not put in a time at all yet, and that is Robert Love. Crosses the line, 125.3, and that's going to slide him into P23, bottom of the leaderboard right now.
Well, interestingly, 2 purple sectors belong to Steve Greenwood. Purple second sector belonged to Marcellus Breuning, but Ragnar Wisloff with the purple final sector sort of measured it at the first half of the lap and then really went all out on it to close the lap. And so he's got pole by 4/10 at the moment from John Morgan. Steve Greenwood half a second back, super close over that next group. You always get that in championship like this, even when someone like a Ragnar Wisloff manages to put in close to the perfect lap in qualifying. In the meat of the field, it's always super close and competitive. You're sort of between 5 and 15th kind of positions. Always very close margins there. Hardis Jorgensen is kind of limping that one around on a cool down lap. Peter Hallstrom, the same is true. Robert Love, is he completing a lap? He is. He's going to be the last driver to complete a lap for Robert Love. His first lap, 25.3. Second lap, 24.6. So just a little bit of improvement, more confidence from lap 1 to lap 2.
Looks like everybody with a lap in now. Just looks like Bob Kern finishing up a warm-up lap, as well as Peter Hallstrom. They're going to continue to run on the racetrack, just looking for a bit of extra practice on the track. They can have that extra 3 minutes to put in that time, as Jerry Kerr, Richard Volley, and Joel Martin all have not put in times, and with all of them not on the racetrack, it looks like all of them will not put in times. But 2.5 minutes remaining for those drivers here in qualifying, and already seeing pretty much a little bit of the same thing that we saw leading up to the first race of the night, David, but also some new stuff, as Ragnar Wisloff is still fast, but John Morgan looking to minimize the mistakes and get home with a podium, and Russ Addy P4 versus P12 at the start of race 1.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we always say a clean slate for this race number 2. One thing I've always enjoyed about this circuit is how the famous oval is 2.5 miles. This road course configuration pretty much bang on exactly the same length as well. So it is a pretty rapid lap around here on the road course in these cars as well. So the drivers with their 1 out lap and their 2 flying laps comfortably fitting their laps into the early part of this 10-minute window. They are going to go to some circuits later on in the year where it could be more of a challenge. Definitely think about your Road Americas and circuits like that. Easily more than a mile longer than this Indy road course.
We could grab
Look
a
at
look
that schedule
at that
again.
schedule.
Yeah, the Watkins Glen road course with the boot, for example, pretty lengthy. Fuji a little more. Road Atlanta not super long, but of course Spa-Francorchamps basically exactly 7,000 meters. That is a large lap.
And of course, the short ovals on there as well. Those are always exciting, with the Phoenix Raceway in Iowa, and then the Daytona road course. I know that's a little bit longer than the normal 2.5 miles of the Daytona International Speedway. And Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, also not the longest also not the longest track in the world, but one that is very, very challenging, especially through a lot of off-camber corners and a lot of just kind of constant speed corners that if you hit that gas a little bit too hard, you're going to be spun around, much like this course tonight.
Yeah, and looks like only 2 Canadians on our grid tonight, but have definitely seen a good showing from them in this championship across the pass as well. So I'm sure they'll be happy for a home race. Although they're as close as Ragnar Wisloff is to Rodskogen, there are probably many a Canadian thousands of miles away from most sport parks, such as their geography a little different. They're going to grid up now for this second of the 2 races. For Ragnar Wisloff, he's gone and clean swept the poles so far. John Morgan joins him on the front row. Steve Greenwood, also a good qualifying performance again. But look at Russ Addy up in 4th. Far cry from where he started race number 1. He'll be much happier with that performance and a little more representative of his race pace as well, it must be said. So that's his second row. Row 3, Gerhardus Jorrison and Donald Fitterer. Jorrison occupying plenty of the TV time in race number 1 as he battled with Bruce Poole. He's going to be right in the thick of it for race number 2. Then 4th row of the grid is Mike Grandy and Ulf Olsen. Got Broining and McCormick on row number 5. The 6th row, Barry Hills and Peter Hellstrom. They start their formation lap now and we'll look a little deeper. Eugene Clark, bit of a race to forget maybe with a bit of contact in race number 1, but he's going to start out at 13th. Smack dab in the middle of the 26 car field. It's Richard Coulomb, David Bradley, Jack Turner, Earl Setzer and Bruce Poole. Might be a bit out of sorts for Bruce Poole given the great outside moves we saw him put on in race number 1. Comfortably inside of the top 10 he was. He's going to start 18th in this one. It's Beasley, Moore, JC Hay, Bob Kern and Robert Love to 23rd spot. A couple of drivers without a qualifying time who we might still see start.
Looks to be Richard Volley, Joel Martin, and Jerry Kerr did not take a time in qualifying, but at least Volley and Kerr are on the grid, and I don't believe Joel Martin is. He is going to be in the pit lane, and we'll see if he begins this race or not. So we'll either have 26 or 25 starting in this race.
Martin, I do think part of the admin team on 60 Plus Racing Adventures. Definitely can race, might not opt to do so in this race number 2. There's a great shot of one of those curbs that you want to get up to but not get too acquainted with. I think you want to give them a kiss, but you don't want to fully embrace them.
Yeah, these curbs are going to be killer, especially those. It's not all of them. You can see the curb we're looking at right here, relatively soft to, well, not soft. It's still hard concrete, but it's not going to be nearly as large as the curbs in the middle portion of this track, specifically on the chicane and on that hard braking zone. You just don't want to touch those high curbs. Those low curbs you can touch all day. And don't even look at the high curbs incorrectly because they will chew you up and spit you out pretty quick.
One of the action zones right here, the Museum Mayhem braking zone, and it's got for its apex there, again, one of those curbs. Pace car pulls in. Ragnar Wisloff timed it pretty well for race number 1. He's going to control the field to the start of race number 2. Seemed about halfway through this final corner, he said, "Cheerio chaps, I'm off," and that seemed to give him about the right spacing for this long run down. He does about the same again, and he wasn't too troubled into the braking zone for turn number 1. The whole field, the final race proceedings, stretching down the straight and almost 4 wide there. Some moves happening pretty early on. You've got 3 wide behind Russ Addy with Fitterer, Greenwood, and Yorison. They all got to go. It's 2 wide, 3 wide. Oh, and there is a giant checkup between turns 1 and 2. Drivers spearing across the grass. My goodness, it starts with McCormick there, and it just carries on.
That is a massive pile up, and Greenwood's in it. Hallstrom, McCormick, and more. Ragnar Witzloff will say goodbye again. He still has John Morgan to try and reel him in. Russ Addy and Donald Fitterer are also there. It looks like Gerhardus Jorison's also involved, and Richard Collum in that one too. And that was just a massive, massive pile up in turn number 1. And we'll grab a replay of what was maybe 5 incidents that all grouped up together as the 771 takes a trip through the grass as well. It looks like it all started around Greenwood.
McCormick, right? Yeah, Greenwood, McCormick-ish kind of area there. A little bit back off of 4th or 5th. I think it's the spun McCormick where it all really, really kicks off. There's Greenwood, maybe gets tagged a little bit, but then McCormick also bails into that and gets caught in the middle of the circuit facing the wrong way.
I'm not even sure if there was any contact to Greenwood. It looked like he might have just lost it on his own there. If there was contact, it was
corner, and the tires would have been cold. I think it's possible. He's on that sort of tight line, trying to avoid Russ Addy around his outside here, and that's where the car becomes very, very skittish. He knows he's got to drive around the outside. He brakes pretty deep from the middle of the road. And doesn't want to hit Russ Addy from behind. Knows he's got a car around the outside, and I think that's what does it.
Yeah, no contact either for Greenwood, and yeah, that's just a complete roadblock there. Not a lot of place for anybody to go. Some drivers taking to the grass, some drivers taking to the asphalt, and then everybody trying to get back going is really what caused the remainder of those incidents, and it's unfortunate for all those drivers, but we still have a good amount still left in this race with Witzloff and Morgan the top 2, and oh, by the way, Russ Addy still edge of the podium looking for more.
Yeah, so here's your top 4 with Witzloff, Morgan, Addy, Fitterer, all of them getting cleanly through turn number 1. It was behind them where the drivers had to wait their turn, navigate their way through the traffic jam, because it was Fitterer in the red machine there around the outside of Greenwood, about where the problem started to kick off behind him. Ulf Olsen, you see in 5th, navigated his way through pretty cleanly, and then some massive winners. Douglas Beasley started 19th on the grid, now runs 7th as he clearly picked the right lane to get through that. Bruce Poole started 18th, now runs 8th. What did I say? That didn't seem like a particularly representative qualifying for him. So really shuffles it up, but is a pretty sad start to the race for about half of the field, because from 15th down to 25th, it's 10 drivers who've all had to go through pit lane to grab their spare car. Such was the damage from that pile-up, not even counting a lot of drivers who easily lost 15-20 seconds as they had to wait for the circuit to clear. So on board with John Morgan, reigning Super 70s champion, behind Ragnar Witzloff, joins an illustrious crew of drivers to get towed around by Ragnar. Addy much closer into the fight this time around though than he was in race number 1. This is the closest he's been to the lead.
And Addy is knocking on the door of John Morgan right now, but can he make the move? On board with Addy, 2 tenths separating himself and John Morgan is Donald Fitterer, who's getting towed by Witzloff, Morgan, and Addy into this first corner. Sets the fastest time of the race at a 1:21.980. With Addy through the middle sector, not enough to catch up in front as there is a driver off and into the gravel. I am not sure who that is, but somebody gets turned around. Jack Turner's around in the final corner. That's definitely not who was around in the gravel there.
Guessing 22nd place, Richard Coulomb. Just as a guess based on the track map.
Seems about right. And let's see what happened to Column here, because he was beached for at least 30 seconds. That's about what I went back, and he's still there. Let's go back a little further. So he's coming out of the pit lane. I'm wondering where this all went south. Of course, he was caught up in the lap 1 incident, I believe. Had to tow it back, grab the fast repair, gets back onto the track. Oh, he hit the grass on the outside of the curb. And that is unfortunate. 2 corners removed from getting out of the pit lane.
Does the Bentley in the Indy 8 hours thing, just turns in with the tyres on just a little bit on the grass. And that becomes his undoing. What did, though, is kind of loop him out of the way of the leaders. They were unfazed by that, and they remain 4 in a line. Wisloff, Morgan, Addy, Fitterer.
Racing down the back straightaway now. 4 laps down. And Wisloff's still doing a good job at holding that lead, and Addy's not able to get by John Morgan, at least for the moment. And remember, just the heartbreak John Morgan had at the start of race number 1. Got wrecked out and ended up so many laps down by the end of that one. Wrecked on lap number 1 through the middle chicane. And now running in second, showing that he does have the speed to hold with Wisloff, to hold with Russ Addy, and obviously to hold with Donald Fitterer as well. Just did not have the luck in race number 1. Now with a bit of luck in race number 2, he holds P2.
Once again, Wisloff leading every lap, triggering the speed trap at the end of this straight at 248 k's an hour, while those behind have 255, 257 for Addy and Fitterer, picking up the double toe. So they really get up towards the top of 6th gear. A lot of straight line speed for these guys. Wisloff, what starts out as a 7/10 lead coming onto the straight, ends at about 3/10. So that's certainly very strong rubber band to try to break. Very consistent drivers behind him as well. John Morgan as, okay, I say it again, reigning Super 70s champion, but second in the overall standings last season. Russ Addy, the reigning champion. They know how to put together some smooth races and some consistent finishes. So they're unlikely to make too many large mistakes that would let Wisloff get away.
Issue there for Jerry Kerr. Let's see what happens to him, and he's already way off the track to let a couple of drivers go by. Wondering where the incident comes from. It was working his way through the newly coined section by one David Haynes. I think we need to get all the Indianapolis track maps updated with the new corner name here, but locks it up and gets back on the gas, and yep, we've seen that plenty of times in that same portion tonight.
Spins it at Museum Mayhem, doesn't he?
Yet another casualty of Museum Mayhem at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Say it enough times, hopefully it'll stick. They are still stuck to Ragnar Wisloff. Very close pack, though. A little bit of slide from Fitterer there, I think, has cost him a couple of car lengths. Not an insurmountable amount of time. He's lost out a bit through the first sector. Still really competitive lap times from our top 4 here. John Morgan's just matched his best. Russ Addy's matched his best. And Ragnar Wisloff within half a tenth of his best. Pack racing plenty still here. This involves a little bit of lap downness going on, but Setzer and Bob Kern off a position here in the red machines, pointing straight to the apex goes Bob Kern to try to steal a spot away from Setzer. Around the outside, managed to hold most of his ground, and now drops it. Looks like the lap down car of maybe David Bradley behind them potentially. Yep, but a move made for position up there by Setzer, and Barry Hills is maybe going to close in on them in the 66 as well. So 11th, 12th, 13th, right in that middle of the field, as we say, a battle for position going on, as well as this train up front.
Bob Kern just got passed again under the braking zone. Earl Setzer goes back on through in this battle for 11th, 12th, and now Barry Hills catching up for 13th as Hills made an aggressive move to the inside. Got shut down by Bob Kern in 12th. Battle for 11th continues, but the battle for second place also continuing with John Morgan still holding on. Russ Addy in third. Donald Fitterer still watching, waiting in the wings. Next driver back is Ulf Olsen, who is back all the way 9 seconds removed from this lead group. And Ragnar Wisloff only able to pull away by about 8/10.
Yeah, it's all about that runoff. A couple corners after here, as to whether he can break that slipstream, break that toe, and he's not in that zone, not in that place right now. 7/10 as they come into the concrete cauldron, and it just evaporates as Morgan has 5, 6, 7 kilometers an hour more straight line speed in towards the braking zone.
Russ Addy just stuck exactly where he was in race number 1, and I'm not, it could be on purpose, because we talked about how it's so easy to swap positions at this racetrack. With all the slipstream down the back straightaway, all the slipstream on the front straightaway, you can swap positions relatively easily. So I'm wondering if Russ Addy is just kind of staying in this third spot because he doesn't want to lose second place and possibly third place if he were to pass John Morgan and then have both Morgan and Fitterer go back on through, or if he's just having trouble catching up to the back wing of John Morgan. We've heard how Russ Addy is confident in the speed of his car. We heard that in post-race for race number 1, but what we also heard was how Ragnar Wisloff especially did have a better car than him.
Yeah, I think for Addy here, so long as Morgan is going along with the leader, he's happy with it. But once there gets a little bit of air gap between Morgan and Wisloff, then I think it's bets off. So you're happy to, go with the peloton when it still contains the leader. But when there's a breakaway and it becomes a little all every man for himself, and it's still ratcheting up the pace. So Wisloff, 21.7, fastest lap of the race. Morgan and Addy just able to go along with that. Everyone in the top 4 setting a personal best on that lap.
Back through the back straightaway, and we're near halfway done with this race. Next time by Wisloff, another fastest lap of the race. John Morgan sitting right behind and is chasing. He is chasing, he is catching, just not quick enough. A second now separating the top 2 as Addy sits behind, and so does Fitterer. That 11th, 12th, 13th place battle has fizzled out. Another closest battle on the racetrack is going to be the drivers 1 lap down. Both of these drivers involved in the opening lap incident. Both have gone to pit lane, taken their quick repairs. It's Gene Moore and it's Gerhardus Jorison, as these two are going to fight on the racetrack right now for P15.
Certainly are. Both of them have been through the pit lane once in this race so far. They're not alone in that. Many other drivers doing likewise. Moore still holding on to it. And I think Russ Addy's had a bit of a wobble up front, because all of a sudden there's more than a second between himself and John Morgan. And this is the real test of the pace for Russ Addy, isn't it? Can he get back to John Morgan to run with the leader, Ragnar Wisloff? I think this is where you've got to go full attack to keep your strategy alive for Russ Addy.
Yeah, this lead pack is spread right back on out to just about what it was a little bit earlier on before they kind of bunched up after that opening lap incident. And now you have to go back about still 8/10 to find John Morgan, as Morgan keeps Addy reeled in, just not enough to get that full bite and reel him up onto the shore from going full fishing analogies here. Russ Addy, 9/10 behind, and he's already caught up 2/10 through Sector 2 and Sector 3. David, I'm thinking he's going to catch up a little bit more down this front straightaway, but no, a big toe to John Morgan from Ragnar Wisloff as Morgan's going to cut a full 10th out of the gap heading into the braking zone of turn 1.
Personal best third sector on that lap from Russ Addy. That's sort of the S's through to the braking zone for the Museum Mayhem. So he really pushed on through there to try to make sure by the time they got to the start-finish line he could try to draft off of John Morgan. Quite close enough, but he's also pushed the braking late into turn number 1 and carried speed through the opening sector of this lap. Finds himself just within the slipstream of Russ Addy, of John Morgan. So Russ Addy's not out of this yet. By no means is he out of this. And then, of course, by extension, that keeps Donald Fitterer in the picture as well, trying to keep the pack of 4 together. They're just that verge of snapping, stretched out as they are, but it could all close back in up very quickly.
And they're going to be catching up to some lap traffic here soon. Next one to go a lap down is going to be Richard Volley. He's battling with Bob Kern, and you can see them right up here in front of this group as the 72 of David Bradley works his way past the number 19 of Earl Setzer. That is not for position. 72 currently scored 1 lap down. This battle right here, for position, 13th and 14th, 9/10 separating them, but have a look at Ragnar Wisloff, who is coming with his train of lead lap cars to work their way by.
That lap, a little off the pace that Wisloff had been banging in the sort of 21.8s, 21.9s. So that just lets Morgan, and by extension Russ Addy, stay in. What happens now with these cars that they are catching? It's going to be before the end of the lap at the rate that your lead group's pressing on. Decisions for Wisloff, how aggressively he attacks this. Field leader is going to have to catch some and wait. 3-way battle between Moore, Yorison and Hay. And Gene Moore runs it super deep into turn 1, but you can get away with that. Anything that's pavement and not grass is fair game right there.
Working their way now down the back straightaway, past the chicane. Yorison all over the back bumper. Does he make a move? Can he make a move? Remember, JC Hay still behind this group and looking to make something happen as well. 2/10 back is Hay. Neither of them are able to make a move as Ragnar Wisloff is around.
It's not going to be back-to-back wins to open the championship for Ragnar Wisloff the way it's looking, because John Morgan's through to lead. Russ Addy, Donald Fitterer, your podium positions. Lost a tiny bit of time to the traffic. Didn't cause a massive problem for Wisloff, but what it did was it put him under pressure. Approaching the braking zone, he had to look in the mirrors. He had to see, where's Morgan, where's Addy, what are they doing? And that's where the mistake came. In towards turn number 1 at the apex, just pushes it on a little too hard. Look at that. The minute he goes to turn in, the rears are locked. That loops him around. No contact, no damage, but he went in a little too deep trying to defend that lead, and it's a result of the pressure.
And now down to 4th with 5 seconds separating himself and Donald Fitterer. Listen in. I just completely locked it up. And that's so unfortunate for Wisloff. That is the one mistake he has made across both races tonight. And unfortunately, it's the one that's going to take him out of a dual race win in both of the races tonight. And he still has the fastest lap of the race. Is now John Morgan assumes the lead, works his way past the lap machine of the number 19 of Earl Setzer.
Yep, and through that open door, Russ Addy and Donald Fitterer step. You could see that the rears locked almost instantaneously for Wisloff, because heard the revs drop, saw the lights disappear from the shift indicator. So it wasn't late on in the corner, it was very early. He had those tyres locked and found himself in a spot of bother. He's not out of this yet, though. I say with some hesitation, 8 laps to go, and he is 5.5 seconds off this group, now led by Morgan. So will we see from Russ Addy that slightly more aggressive streak now that the win is on the table and Ragnar Wisloff is at least 90% out of the picture?
Addy with 6/10 behind. I'm wondering what Fitterer's going to do, because he's just kind of been sitting here, but last time by ran a faster lap than both of the drivers in front of him. He ran a 122.955. John Morgan and Russ Addy both in the low 123s. This time by 122.56 by Morgan, 122.52 by Russ Addy, and a 122.44 by Donald Fitter. So he's running faster than both of the leaders in front. With 8 to go, he's got to start thinking about what he is going to do to try and get this race win, because clearly that 11 has race winning pace, as we see Bob Kern and Richard Valley go fighting again. Valley taking 13th away from Bob Kern.
Yep, our last 2 drivers who haven't been through the pit lane, so a clean race so far for Valley and Kern, and that's reflected in some pretty big gains from their starting positions at the moment. That consistency and being clean always pay rewards in this kind of racing. So those guys, they're looking for a tidy result if they can get one. It's 1 second as a blanket for your top 3. 8, soon to be 7 to go. Could be absolutely anyone's, given how easy little mistakes happen and how powerful that slipstream is on the pit straight. You see, just puffs a tyre lock up there in turn 12. So easily done. But a little lock up can become a big one, and that's where Ragnar Wisloff came undone. Traffic does not want to be involved in this at all for your top 3, so they have an unsullied run down towards picking your braking marker at turn number 1. Fitterer dives it in pretty deep, but you can get away with that. Track's pretty wide at that segment.
Board with Fitterer as he works his way through a very light portion of the track. The car's wanting to go around through there and then through the chicane. Flat out into these machines, and Indy cars, NASCAR Cup Series, Next Gens, or NASCAR Xfinity Series cars, not so much. But back into the braking zone. Braking just right past that curb on the outside line. These cars can brake real late. It's flat out in the Miata, really?
Actually, I drove the version that's got the hairpin there.
Ah!
So, taking the right kink. Yeah, all 120 horsepower flat out.
Unfortunately, no Miatas on the track, but I can't imagine taking the iRacing MX-5s onto this track would be pretty entertaining.
I think it'd be pretty predictable results, I reckon. Robert Love's gonna try to stay out of the way of your top 3. 6 to go, and only 7/10 to separate all of them. Russ Addy's super close at the braking zone there into 1. Doesn't use all of the pavement, because then he tries to square it up that exit off turn 2. You definitely do notice a significant variation in the lines to 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Back straightaway now for Morgan, Addy, and Fitterer. Another lap last time by where actually Donald Fitterer, slowest of the 3. Russ Addy going to the top of the board among these top 3 last time by the start finish in terms of lap time. And you can see 4/10 separating your race leader and second place. Make it 6/10 as Addy having to get out of the gas at the exit of that corner there. Gets right back on, back to the short chute of 1 and 2 in the oval. Addy gets close, still not close enough as Fitterer continues to watch in the rearview mirror and is keeping up with this lead group. And again, Fitterer has shown that he has speed. Out of the drivers in the top 3, for a good amount of laps, has been the fastest driver of the 3, and it was same thing last time by.
What's it gonna come down to for another lap? Russ Addy so close, but not close enough to make a move, or not willing to make a move into turn number 1. And then he runs a little wide there. Could leave him vulnerable to Federer down the back straight if Federer decides now is the time. Seem well incentivized to do it.
.3 still behind for Federer on the track. Nobody else in that close of a battle. Setzer and Volley are still fighting for P12 on the track at the moment. They're both scored 1 lap down, of course, but Setzer able to hold off Volley for the 12th spot, 19 versus the number 69, and keeping a relatively cordial gap at about half a second between these two. But with 5 to go, make it 4 to go at the line this time. John Morgan looking to go from near 0 in race number 1 to a hero in race 2 and grab the win, but he's got to hold back multi-time champion behind of Russ Addy, as well as one of the fastest drivers on the track right now as Donald Federer.
And the traffic starts to become more challenging as they get deeper into this race as well. Jack Turner sort of mowing the grass out of the way of our leaders in the final sector there. No dramas. A lot of respect's being given, but it's always a question mark or an unknown. When you're the leader, you'd probably rather all clear track to the end just to take out the chance, to take out the roll of the dice and put it all in your own hands if you're John Morgan. Again, for Russ Addy, the unpredictability could be to his benefit, but without it, the slipstream's looking pretty powerful, especially at the gap he has right now at 0.4 of a second.
3 to go this time by the yard of bricks, and Addy is still there. He needs a really, really good run down one of these straightaways to make the move, and he might have it here. Look at that big wiggle from John Morgan. It's down to 0.3. If Addy can hold within this slipstream, he might have an opportunity. It's still closing. 0.2 now as they run down the straightaway. Fastest lap for Addy. He goes for the move in turn 1, side by side for the race lead, and give it to Russ Addy on the inside by a few inches at the exit.
Best seat in the house. That was just that little wiggle, that little slide from Morgan put him in a super vulnerable position. Addy knew that was his chance. He saw that. He goes through into the lead, perfectly judged on the brakes as well, just clear at the apex, tracked out, and he's got the lead, shoes on the other foot. He's got to lead the pack and try to defend, and it brings Federer into the picture as well. They've almost never been closer right at this pointy end of the race, and it is so easy with that slipstream to think, oh, I'm quite a bit quicker. When I get around, I'll be able to sail off into the distance. But then you realise how strong that slipstream really was. As they flick around, and now it's John Morgan and Donald Federer staying right in lockstep with Russ Addy, who's got to be precise and perfect through here, where Morgan had just a tiny slip. It's so close. It's 0.7 for all of them. It's 3.5 first to second, and immediately Russ Addy running it down the inside line, not wanting to give away that slipstream. Almost surprised that Morgan didn't follow him, but with 1 to go, you'd almost assuredly have to. They all compress into the braking zone for turn number 1 for the penultimate time. Anyone's race still to be won here.
John Morgan gonna get close again, but not close enough. What's Federer going to do? Is he willing to sit in 3rd and grab a bottom step of the podium position, or does he want 2nd place? Morgan's got the run this time down the back straightaway. He's not going to have enough time. He peaks to the bottom. Into the braking zone they go, and just not enough for Morgan to keep up with Addy. This is going to be close when they come down the front straightaway this time by David. Morgan needs a perfect exit out of this final complex when they're coming up to now to be able to get by Russ Addy. I think this might be his last opportunity down into turn 1.
Yeah, if you lead out that exit of turn number 1, then I think that's the best placed chance for the win. So it's all about this run onto the straight to take the final lap. Russ Addy's done it just about right. He's going to play these games, but Morgan is going to try to follow those wheel tracks. Is he? Not quite. Not going to close up enough to have a dive into turn number 1, I don't think. Be oh so close. In line, they break in towards turn number 1. No mistakes from Addy, no mistakes from Morgan, no mistakes from Fitterer either. So close, but I think Addy has survived the biggest test of his leadership here. It's easy from here on out. You've just got to be perfect.
And Russ Addy is really good at doing that. One last opportunity for John Morgan. Does he have enough momentum into the braking zone? No, he does not. And through the final few sectors, it's looking like it's all going to be Russ Addy, and even Donald Fitterer, not enough at the end to make anything happen for him, as well as Bruce Poole is able to get by Eugene Clark for 6th. Russ Addy is looking to go back to victory lane once again for the first time now in season 24.
One last real braking zone for him there. Drops from the banking into the infield, keeps it tidy, looks to get smooth traction towards the line. Quite a run to the yard of bricks, but I think he's just got enough. The reigning champion takes the win to go equal points leader with Ragnar Wisloff out of this round number 1. Poor qualifying for race number 1, but a perfect race for race number 2 for Russ Addy.
Still got a battle for 6 now between Bruce Poole and Eugene Clark. Poole's able to get that spot. Can Clark take it back? He cannot. Bruce Poole in 6th is going to hold on to the spot in the number 57, and they will come across the line and finish just like that. No other close battles on the racetrack, just a lot of drivers looking to come across the line, and this one being Douglas Beasley looking for another top 10, with Barry Hills and Mike Grandy looking to round out the top 10 in the running order.
Bruce Poole looking like our biggest mover of this race at the moment as well, from 18th on the grid to finish, I think, 6th again, potentially. And these are our last cars on the lead lap, Barry Hills and Mike Grandy. Barry Hills, the highest finishing driver who made a pit stop. He still gets 9th, so got in and out of pit lane pretty quick on that opening lap, and then kept his head down for the rest of the 22 laps. Well, what a surprising race up front. Wisloff unflappable in race number 1, comes unstuck in race number 2, then Addy makes the move on Morgan to take the win. 4 drivers in contention for it deep into the race, and Addy comes out on top just ahead of Morgan and Fitterer. Wisloff still bags that 4th place and is off to a good start in the championship. Wolf Olsen, super consistent. I think that's 2 5th places for him. And sometimes, if the camera's not showing you, you're having a good race. Ironic how it works like that. Bruce Poole, Eugene Clark, Douglas Beasley, Barry Hills, and Mike Grandy, our top 10 there. And the last car on the lead lap as well. Robert Love just slipped off it with the pace that our leaders managed, and of course that big turn 1 shunt. Richard Varley, Earl Setzer, Bob Kern, JC Hay, Gene Moore, all just off the lap, and finishing 2 laps down for Jack Turner, Peter Hellstrom, David Bradley, and Gerhardus Jorison. Richard Coulomb also 2 laps back. Retirements mainly from the early carnage. Jerry Kerr, Steve Greenwood, Marcellus Bruining, Mike McCormick, and Joel Martin. Well, we got yet more drivers standing by once again, so I reckon we go to some of the drivers we haven't spoken to yet this evening. Includes, congratulations, Donald Fitterer on a podium, and I would say one of the best placed views of the great battle we had.
Hey, thanks, guys. Yeah, considering I hadn't been on a sim for 2 weeks, I'm pretty happy.
So, obviously, a pretty powerful slipstream down the long pit straight and across the famous yard of bricks kept you in contention, kept you right in the pack all race long, and hats off to you because you were far more patient with it than I would have ever been.
Well, I hadn't been on the track or done anything until yesterday morning, and I could not keep my car on this track for the first practice session. And so I'm really good at following people, and if they can do it, I usually can do it.
You would be very susceptible to joining a cult then, potentially, but it did look like, this Indy Pro 2000, a bit wiggly at times with a short wheelbase, small little car, but it did seem like the braking, the traction, and the overall surface grip, plenty of drivers spinning in places you might not have expected. Ragnar Wisloff, one of them.
Yeah, I think he caught one of those bollards, or the higher elevation apexes there, and just spun him. The rest of the time, boy, gosh, he is fast.
Yeah, absolutely. 2 times a champion. He might be heading for 3rd. I think sailing season is over, so racing season is on. That's what it seems like for him.
Yeah, it seems that way. For me, I'll be leaving for another 3-week trip in my RV, and then I'm getting married on November 12th, and yeah, so it's going to be a busy season, so I probably won't get to race and be in contention.
You've got a stacked calendar to bring you through to the end of the year then. Congrats on the podium, and I guess surviving the turn 1 carnage in this final race of the night.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I wasn't expecting to be in 3rd so quickly.
Best luck with the trip and the wedding. See you around.
Cheers, David.
What do you reckon then, Josh? We'll grab John Morgan.
2nd place for John Morgan. A lot better than your race number 1 result. John, congratulations on getting onto the podium here.
Thank you, sir.
And of course, I mentioned it being a much better result than race number 1. That incident in race 1 in the chicane taking you out, and not really anything you could have done there. Just kind of getting caught in the crossfire. But it seems like race number 2, everything except the win went your way.
Yeah, much better race. It was kind of shocking to see Ragnar spin out there and give me the lead. But from then on, I was just trying to hang on, and I think Russ knew I was going to be a little conservative. He got a good run on me to get by, but there wasn't a lot I could risk after that first race.
Yeah, and of course, with the points going your way in race number 2, you get to keep these points. In race number 1, just kind of a gray area now when it comes to the results. But did you know you had a car to contend in race number 1? And if you did, how much did that incident really hurt more because you knew that you had a car to contend?
Yeah, I've been quick all week in practice, and like the top 3 all week, and in my qualifying practice runs, I've had good times. So yeah, I knew I could run in the top 3, 4, 5. I mean, we have a group of guys that run up front that week to week are going to be there. With Ragnar dropping out, Steve Greenwood dropping out. I mean, those guys are typically up front too. So. Sometimes the brakes go your way and sometimes they don't. So 2nd race, I definitely kind of went my way a little bit.
Well, congratulations on the podium finish, John. And hopefully we'll be talking to you next time we're live here on RaceSpotTV with another podium finish.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks.
Great to hear from John Morgan, David. And now we get to talk with one driver again. This time, top step of the podium, though. It's Russ Addy.
Hey guys, back again.
Yeah, and I'm sure even more thrilled now, not only qualifying better, running with the lead pack, biding your time, and making a pretty impressive pass for the lead.
I had one shot, and that was it. Unfortunately, John is such a gentleman racer that I knew if I got up beside him, he wouldn't turn into me and take us both out.
Well, we're saying you're the most successful driver in terms of championships in this car in the Indy Pro 2000. Driver who seems best placed to challenge you for that had that race 1 win, but you've got one over him in race number 2. Sailing season's over, racing season is on.
Yeah, I was shocked when Ragnar caught the curb and spun. He would have had us, I think, easily if he'd have stayed out front.
So what does this do for the rest of the championship then? Any particular tracks you might be looking forward to? Is it going to be the faster tracks or the tighter tracks that might favour you? We're going to some new places. There are some well-trodden roads in 60 plus racing adventures. I would say Road Atlanta, Watkins Glen, some of those, but Rodskogen, Fuji.
Well, the Rutskogen is apparently Ragnar's home track. He lives very close to that, so he knows the track very well. I think just the key is consistency, is to try to, finish in that top 3 or 4 every race, and at least you'll be in the hunt.
Certainly the way. 2 consecutive championships underneath your belt. Is that more or less pressure to perform this season?
I don't know. I think every race is pressure. The guys that you're racing against, everybody up front is past champions, so there's no easy win at any of these tracks.
Yeah, definitely. With 23 now coming up to 24 seasons underneath, there is some. Well, I think it's fair to say every driver in this championship is already pretty well experienced, but there are definitely some long-time competitors well versed with this style of racing.
Yeah, there's guys like Steve Greenwood who I guess went out this race. He'll be right in there every race. It's a great championship. It's a great bunch of guys, and it's so much fun.
Well, we're looking at your helmet. The ball's back in your court now after race number 2.
Well, I think Ragnar and I are tied probably, so we'll be fighting every race.
He's got those poles and those fastest laps. That's where you're going to have to up the ante, and best of luck with your season. We look forward to seeing you when Race Spot next broadcast.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate your broadcast. I always do well in your broadcast, so as I always say, I wish you did every one.
Well, we'll take that as an incredibly sincere compliment and look forward to seeing you again soon. We can say the same to our viewers as well, Josh, because that has been a pretty well intriguing start to season 24 of 60 plus racing adventures. Set up a championship challenge between 2 past champions, but only one of them can come out on top in season 24. There's definitely still some other drivers around the fringe with some consistent finishes that could challenge for that as well, in a schedule unlike they've seen before.
Yeah, I think intriguing is the exact right word to use. And you mentioned the schedule being very unique. We'll look one more time at it before we wrap up here. But next time, we're going to see all of you at home on RaceSpotTV is the Silverstone historic layout as well on October 19th. So make sure that you're back here in the month of October for more 60 plus racing adventures. But the season, David, is going to go to Watkins Glen, Phoenix, Fuji, and Road Atlanta before we meet this group again. And it's pretty even in the championship right now between Russ Addy and the driver of winning of race number 1, Ragnar Wisloff. This is going to be a very, very interesting season to keep watching.
Yeah, definitely a handful of drivers who on their day can stand on the top step of the podium here in 60 plus racing adventures. And so who can do that consistently, who can do that the most, is going to be the real championship decider, and it very well could go down to the wire again on this one. Wherever you are watching, make sure you subscribe to us at RaceSpotTV, because we look forward to bringing you not only more of 60 plus racing adventures, but many, many other great iRacing series, leagues and championships. You're not going to want to miss them. From myself, David Haynes, from Joshua Lee, we say goodbye from Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course, and congratulations to our race winners Russ Addy and Ragnar Wisloff.